Hey guys, what is going on? Welcome back to another video here on the channel. Today we're going to be talking about the 5 mistakes that you want to avoid if you are new to the RC world. Now, if you're able to avoid these 5 things that we're going to be talking about today, that will make your RC experience or journey that much more successful. Now let's dive right into the video for today and start off with number 1. Now I know that there's a lot of radio control vehicles out there on the market, and that top tier of radio control vehicles in every single category is high performing, very complex, and possibly difficult to build or even drive. Now my recommendation, if you are new to the hobby, don't start off by trying to go a million miles an hour. Start with that beginner friendly or even intermediate friendly if you think you have the experience as a driver or a builder. Don't try and start off at the high end, very complex. That is only going to get you into trouble. In other words, what does this mean? Well, what you don't want to do is to go out for your first radio control boat and pick up one of these electric outrigger style hulls. These types of hulls take a lot of experience to really understand how they have to be set up. A very small adjustment on this style of RC boat really changes the way that it drives. Even right down to the propeller. You can have 2 different 42mm propellers, but only one of them are going to work correctly based on the lifting characteristics of the propeller. The same idea would apply to a radio control car. Don't go out and get that 100+ mile an hour car. That really takes a lot of setup experience to go and drive. This particular model of a radio controlled on-road car is a 1/8 scale that was never meant to go over 100 miles an hour, but has now been set up to do that. And just because it can hit that on paper doesn't mean that this chassis and body will be able to handle it. In fact, the body can't handle it and ends up bowing up and trying to fly away on you. You don't want to make your experience unsuccessful because of your specific selection that you made with radio controlled car. And lastly, the same idea for a radio-controlled airplane. Don't go out as your first radio-controlled airplane and pick up that jet turbine-powered RC jet. This is not going to be, obviously, the best choice for someone who's new to airplanes. Not only do you need to understand how these things operate, but you have to understand how they fly. And at 150+ miles an hour, it is not the easiest thing. By now, I'm sure you understand the point. Let's move on to point number 2. Now, in order to avoid making this mistake, all you need to do is learn not alone. You don't want to be the only source of information for your radio-controlled experience. My recommendation is to go visit your local club. If you end up at a radio controlled car club and they're running at a local track, check out the types of vehicles that they're running, the types of setups that they're using, what kind of batteries are they running, what do the motors look like. You want to check out all of this stuff. And the best thing to do is talk to those people, talk to them. They're very willing to explain and talk about the hobby that they're very passionate about. They'll tell you about what they run. They'll tell you how you can get involved and how you can even join the club. These are all the things that you want to know as someone who's new to the hobby. If they're able to help guide, coach you, and mentor you through this process, it's going to make your experience that much more successful. The same idea would apply if you're looking at radio controlled boats. Another good thing to understand is the type of classes that are being run at these clubs. You don't want to go and buy that new radio controlled boat and it doesn't actually fit within a class that they run. If you're the only one running that radio controlled boat, you're going to have no one to race. And this is even more important when you're looking at a radio-controlled airplane. One of the things that a local radio-controlled airplane club will be able to do for you is to help get you into the air. Figure out how you can learn how to fly a radio-controlled airplane. Once you have that experience in flying the radio-controlled airplane, it's going to make your complete RC journey that much more successful. I've seen it, unfortunately, when guys have bought their very first radio-controlled airplane. I've offered to help them get it into the air, and they said, oh no, I won't need any help. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take it easy. I'm going to get it up into the air. I'm not going to do anything crazy, and then I'm going to bring it in for a landing. Well, they came back and said to me, you know what? That plane, it was only up in the air for about 2 or 3 seconds. And now they say, hey, are you able to help me out? I go and take a look at the airplane, and this one happened to be off of the water and got a whole bunch of water damage and was no longer running. In order to get that plane back up and running, they'd have to buy new electrical components. Avoid this at all cost and get the help when it's really ultimately free. Number 3. What you want to avoid is not picking up one of the best tools that you can get for this hobby, and especially if you run radio-controlled electric power systems. That is going to be your temperature gun or temp reader. These small little electronic devices that allow you to measure the temperature of all the different components on your electric vehicle is going to make you more successful. Why? Well, knowing the temperature that your electric motor is running at, the speed control of your unit, as well as the battery pack is very important in RC. This lets you know as to where you are running within the limit range of that specific component. If you don't know your temperatures, you have no idea where your components are within their limits. And you may be saying, well, I've just picked up a ready-run vehicle. It doesn't matter. It works for those as well. You do want to see where the temperatures are at with your radio-controlled ready-to-run vehicle. Even if your temperatures are okay in that first few runs, it may not be in the future. And this is where you can catch problems early. Make sure you pick up that temperature gun. And even further yet, another one that I would prefer to have is a data logger. If you have access to a data logger for one of your first radio control vehicles, that will also help. If you don't know all the parameters within your radio control vehicle, you're kind of shooting in the dark, not knowing where you're running at. This one, however, is optional for now. You will, down the road, want to know exactly where your radio control vehicle is operating in terms of the voltage, current, and wattage output of those specific power systems. Number 4, this one really comes down to the lithium polymer battery pack that we're all using in our radio control brushless power system. What we want to make sure that we're doing is following all the specification parameters of that battery pack, but it doesn't all end in there. What we mean by that is you want to make sure you're operating at the correct voltage, you have the correct C rating for your pack as well as capacity in order to make sure that you have the necessary continuous discharge rating that your battery pack has to have to meet the demands of your radio control vehicle. And what I meant by it doesn't end there is what I often find, and this is truly the mistake that you want to avoid, is to follow the necessary maintenance guidelines for battery packs. What you want to be doing is if you go and run your vehicle, you don't want to just drain it all the way down to the bottom. You want to stop, leave that 20% remaining in the battery pack, and you don't want to put it on the shelf at that 20% level. What you want to do is you want to charge it up to a storage voltage. This is what's going to maximize the lifespan of that lithium polymer battery pack so that you get years of use out of it and not just a single season. What I often find is that guys who go and have those radio control cars or airplanes, they have their battery pack all charged up, they have multiple of them, and then what they do is they realize that it starts raining and they're not going to be able to run it. They have that fully charged battery pack, they throw it into a lipo-safe bag and then into their closet to be stored for months on end, and that is what really kills the lifespan of those battery packs. Make sure you avoid that by bringing those battery packs either up or down to the storage voltage required. Number 5. Now this really comes down to building a radio control vehicle. It may not be one of your first vehicles that you own, but it might be one of your second or even your third. And this comes down to the brushless motor. I get several messages every single month asking these same questions, and this is specific to the kV of the motor. Make sure that you truly and ultimately understand the type of kV that you have to pick for your application. The kV that you select for your motor highly depends on your application as well as the battery pack that you plan to run with it. Don't think that you can go out, buy a specific motor just because it's the right size doesn't mean it's going to come with the right kV. This is ultimately up to you to select, and this is by far the biggest mistake that RC hobbyists make. Well guys, that pretty well does it for this video. Check out the Patreon page that we have. Like the video if you do, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so that I can see you in that next video. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next Monday.